Canon and PNG, yes.
Are you limited to 256 colors?
Yeah, you're limited into the color palette with a GIF. Alright? So, therefore, it can get by with storing less colors. Alright? So it can store less information about each color. Alright? Now, it's not as though you're limited to red, green, blue, whatever. It looks at the color palette you use and decides what the most popular colors are, and if there's something close enough to it, it will go and approximate it. Let's go back to the little thingy I drew. And let's bring up the bitmap in Paint, and let's save it as a GIF file. And let's see what the size of that compares. I will, by the way, be signing prints of this in lab, if anyone wants to purchase one. No, I'm just kidding. Alright, I'll go up here and say, save as, GIF. Alright, and I'll save it on the desktop. Alright, now let's look at the size. Remember, this was 200 and some KB. 280 KB roughly. This was 115 KB, so less than half the size. This one is 42 KB. Alright? In terms of compression, explain why this worked this way. What you know about compression and what we talked about, the difference between a JPEG and GIF, why should you not be surprised that the GIF is a lot smaller than this? Because there's less colors. Alright? If you notice in this drawing, how many colors are there? There's only like 4, right? There's white, red, green, and yellow. So that's the only 4 colors. So the limitation of a GIF that says a GIF can only store a limited number of colors, what did we say, 256? Alright? It's not really a limitation, right? Because there's only 4, alright? There's actually room to spare here, alright? So, what is the implication of this for if you are doing a line drawing, if you are designing a logo, for example? Use GIF. Yeah, if you're doing a drawing, most drawings that you're going to make, if I were to make a logo for my company, or like, here's an example of something, or if we go and look at LC's page where we have a logo. Alright, that logo, there might be 3 or 4 colors, I don't know. Alright, it's probably better to use a GIF. If, however, I'm using a photograph, the restriction is going to be a big one. Alright, let's go and let's look at a JPEG and let's edit that and save it as a GIF. So let's go here, let's go into the sample pictures, and I'll open this guy up in Paint. Alright, let's go and let's save that. As a GIF. Let's put it on the desktop. Kind of giving you a warning that that could happen. Alright? In other words, Paint is smart enough to know that, gee, there might actually be, more than 256 colors in here. I want to go ahead and save it anyhow. Now, what I'd like to do is let's bring up the original in the GIMP. The GIMP is an open source image editing software. And let's bring up the GIF in there. And let's see if we can see any noticeable differences. I'm guessing we can. If anything, possibly the fact that it's projected might make it a little harder to see, but I'm guessing that we will be able to spot some differences. But first, a word from our sponsor. The GIF is a big the GIMP rather is a big program, and it does take a long time to load it up. So it's chugging away. If you're talking about stuff for the web, and I'm not talking about stuff that you embed in Flash, but if I'm talking about creating a web page, your choices for images are JPEG, GIF, and PNG. So don't store it in another format. Yes?
What do you use TIFF for?
What do you use TIFF for? That's a good question. We can look that one up. I guess if I take that question literally, what do I use TIFF for? I don't. All right. I do know that if I take screenshots on my Mac, it stores it as a TIFF for whatever reason. So it must like that format for screenshots for whatever reason. We can look that up in a second here. All right. Here's a JPEG version, and here is the GIF version. All right. You're going to have to take my word for it, or I can zoom this in a lot. Let's zoom it in 800. All right. There's the sky zoomed in 800% in the JPEG version. Here's the sky zoomed in 800% on the GIF version. All right. Pretty dramatic, right? Because the JPEG has the ability to store more colors, all right? It can get all those shades of blue in there, all right? Whereas when we stored it as a GIF, it says, hey, I'm limited to how many colors I can have. Therefore, I got these 2 pixels here that are really just off by a smidgen. Well, I'm going to go and I'm going to store, you know, this color and this color, and if it's anywhere in between, I'll pick one of those 2. You know, I'll pick the one that's closest to. All right. So you can notice already that this, again, even at 800%, really projected, you can barely see any sort of pixelization at all. If I look real close on the monitor, I can see a little bit of it. All right, simply because in this format, I can store much richer range of colors. Whereas in this one, where I can say 256 is obvious that. And in fact, you end up with some things that look a little goofy. For example, this pixel there almost looks orangish. This pixel here almost looks greenish or yellowish. So it's just how that algorithm did it. So GIFs don't work very well for photographs. All right. They work very well for sort of line drawings. So if you're making a logo, store a GIF. If you're making a picture, store a JPEG. Questions about any of this? What if I wanted a gradient? Does everyone know what I mean by a gradient? This is an example of a gradient, if you can see. Notice how it's darker blue up there. As you move down, it sort of gets lighter blue. If I wanted to store a gradient, what would be the best way to do that? A JPEG. All right? Why? Well, again, the whole thing of a gradient is the fact that it shows subtle differences in colors. The fact that a GIF doesn't do as good a job showing a subtle difference in colors, therefore lends it to not being as good. So if we look at images, I think I have a gradient done as a GIF. I did this in another class, and I just saved the results. There's a gradient done as a JPEG. Here's a gradient done as a GIF. And actually, we have to, oops. Actually, we'd have to zoom it, but if you notice, even as we zoom the JPEG, You really see like no difference in shading between that. As we look at the GIF, there I'm zooming it in, you'll notice that it definitely gets sort of a checkerboard look there because it's trying to figure out how to store that with only so many colors, and therefore it's going to do sort of a checkerboard effect that at a small enough size, you can't really tell, but as it gets big enough, then you can see the difference between the two. Questions about any of this? How many colors can you, we said that there's 256 colors with a GIF. How many colors with a JPEG? Yeah, a lot of them. All right, let's Google it. Too bad we don't have any tests in this class, because if I ask the question of how many colors are in a JPEG, you can just write a lot of them, right? And say, well, that's what you said. And I'll be like, yeah, I guess I did say that, you know. Number of colors in a JPEG. Again, for me, it's less important to know those kind of things, numbers, than to know that the GIF limits the number of colors you have, and limits it fairly drastically. All right, not in terms of if you're doing drawings, but if you're doing photographs. It says here that there's 24 color JPEG images store 24 bits per pixel, so that would be 65,000 times 256, I think. 256 to the third power, or to the 24th power. (256 times 256 times 256). Yep, 16 million and change. All right, that you can store with that. It does show that there are that you can variable, that the 24 is sort of the standard, but that you can store things a couple other ways. Question was asked about TIFF files. Tagged image format is a format, all right, blah, 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 blah. And the answer is, I have no idea what the difference between a TIFF file and a JPEG file is. I do know that that's not standard for the web, so you can't put a TIFF on a web page and all that. But to be frank, I haven't worked enough with TIFF files to. TIFF files are larger? Okay.
Yeah, my guess it would be between a GIF and a JPEG.
Okay.
Because graphic artists work used to use.
Okay.
GIFs for
The one thing that it did say, I did glean from that article, is that it is used oftentimes if you're going to like print the image, if you make it printer ready. And I do know that that's true. There was one site that I submitted photographs to be printed to, and they required TIFF because, again, it supported the higher quality. All right. We only have a couple minutes left, so I don't want to get into anything new, but I do want to make, I posted some announcements concerning spring break, which is next week. All right. Which means there's no class, there's no lectures. That doesn't mean that I'm not available. I mean, I will be available to answer questions online. I still check my email, or even during break, so don't think that. The one thing I would say is this is a great opportunity for you to catch up on stuff if you've fallen behind on something, or if you need to redo an assignment or whatever. It's a great opportunity for that. The other thing it's a great opportunity for is to start doing something as far as your project goes. Does anyone have questions concerning the project? Has anyone thought of an idea for a project? Does anyone realize that we had a project due in this class? All right, well that's good. That's good. I was going until I got a yes on something. All right. Has anyone given any thought? It maybe has some potential projects. Yes.
I was thinking about the pianist Jim Burton.
Okay.
Trying to maybe where he plays a song, maybe see if I can grab some of his images
Okay.
on his website and
Okay.
show him like playing the piano or such.
Okay. Multimedia about a musician. That's fine. Do be aware of copyright law, and there are some restrictions about how much you could use. You could, for example, use an audio sample, but you're limited to how much you can use. And again, review that. In this assignment. Any other thoughts, ideas?
I'm not really sure how many elements of multimedia you want us to use.
You know what? I'll bet you any teacher on campus could answer this question. All right? I'll bet you a grade school teacher could answer this question. What do you think the answer is to that?
Whatever you need.
As many as you need, exactly. As many as you need. All right? Right? Because, if you're doing something, if you are talking about a painter, you're doing your multimedia presentation about a painter. All right? Would your audio clips help you at all? Probably not. Maybe if you had an interview with them, that might be good. All right. Video clip, possibly. All right. Images, definitely. Text, sure. Animation, possibly. All right. Doing one on a musician. All right. Audio, video would be appropriate. Now, I guess what I'm saying is, if you were to come up with me and say, I'm creating a novel for my multimedia, right? Ambitious here. Multimedia project, and therefore all I'm going to need is text. I'd probably look and say, oh, come on now, be reasonable. It's a multimedia class, you need to do more than that. But if you're making an attempt and you have a good idea, then you let the project answer the question for you, what you need to use. All right? Again, within reason, I'm doing it about, astronomy, and therefore most of the universe is blank space, so therefore I'm going to have 8 empty pages. And I will say that this is an animation. No, come on. We know not to do things like that. So as long as you're being reasonable in terms of picking a topic, that will tell you what the number of multimedia elements that you need is. Now, I don't want you to shoehorn things in. Well, we studied video, so I better have a video in it. Not really. Did I see a hand up?
Yeah, it says here, a presentation that contains 5 to 7 pages linked.
Yep.
Is that like scenes or?
And we'll talk about your options as far as that. It should be, I'm using the word pages loosely there.
Okay.
All right? Should be 5 or 6 different things, 5 or 6 different segments, if you want to call it that way. And those could be scenes. They could be separate SWF files, 5 or 6 small SWF files that are linked via a web page. We'll talk about your options as far as navigation goes. But, 5 or 6, I guess, on a conceptual level, pages, that I would say. For example, getting back to the musician example, there might be a biography page. There might be a gallery page. There might be a video sample page. There might be an audio sample page. Now, how you implement that, there could be a wild range of variations. You could do some of it in HTML, maybe. You could do some of it in Flash. You could have one giant Flash animation that had all of them together. So, again, it's more of a sort of logical kind of thing than physically how it's implemented. We'll discuss the alternatives for that. I guess for now, you sort of have to take it on faith that you'll know how to do it by the time you need to do it. All right? Other questions? All right. I would hope that, who would think that already we're halfway through the semester? Actually, probably slightly more than halfway through the semester, given this is week 8 and there's 15 weeks and there's no final in this class. So who would have thought we made it this fast to this point? And therefore, the second half of the class is probably going to go by as fast or faster. So don't delay thinking about your project. All right, we'll see you in lab.